Hello and welcome back to the Public Eye Business Podcast brought to you by Granite Exchange. I'm your host, Sarah Travers, and throughout this series, I speak with local entrepreneurs and business owners to learn more about how their companies have come to be, to gain insight into their growth, and find out crucially how they continue to innovate. So wherever you get your podcasts from, remember to keep an eye out for all new episodes and subscribe to stay up to date. Well, today I'm joined by Melanie Dawson, and Melanie is director and founder of Origin 7. How are you, Melanie? Welcome to the podcast studio.
I'm great. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for the invite.
Right, can't wait to hear more. I know you from way back, but let's just tell the listeners a little bit about Melanie and her business. So in August 2020, after spending months at home like the rest of the world, raising her young family and all that homeschooling, Melanie decided that working for someone else and the extensive time spent travelling was no longer what she wanted to do. So instead, she took the leap and set up Origin 7. Now, Melanie worked before in construction, so Origin 7 provide excellent BIM, which is Building Information Modelling, and digital construction consultancy services to all who procure, design, build or maintain assets in the built environment. So that's quite wordy, but we'll drill down into that in a minute. So Melanie and her team are highly experienced industry experts, and their experience includes winning awards for transformation and BIM excellence and working with companies to position them at the forefront of BIM and digital construction in the UK and Ireland. So Melanie, it's a complicated world, and if you know about construction, you'll know exactly what BIM is and all of that. But I suppose for those who don't, if you want to explain a little about your work within the construction industry and where this digital transformation has taken construction.
Okay. Well, probably the first thing to explain is BIM, really, or what that actually means. So I think when we're talking about building information modelling, what we're talking about is creating an information data set really about either your design project, your construction project, or the asset management part of that as well. I think in construction we're notoriously bad at managing our information and particularly managing that digitally. And a few years ago, I suppose BIM started to really get a big uptake and started to be implemented within organisations. And fundamentally what we do is help companies buy better information, use their information better, share it better, and work with it more digitally. And then we wrap that all up with different technology solutions as well. So I suppose what we try to do is to explain it as simply as possible. There's a lot of acronyms and abbreviations and complexities around it, but at the end of the day, it's just information, and what we're trying to do is to put it in a structured digital way so people can use it better and get more value out of it.
How did you get into construction?
I started a long time ago now. I did architecture at university, and after I graduated, so I went to Queen's. After I graduated, one of the first jobs I had was a little airport refurb up at the international airport, and I was working with the contractor team there, and we were doing it. Small job, reasonably sort of trivial in terms of what needed to be done, but every time we looked at something there was a problem and another problem and another problem, and we had to find a way of fixing it. So I probably quickly found myself moving from the design creation space to the design management space, and on the back of that project then I was offered a job by a contractor doing design management. And I think for me that was just a real light bulb moment, because whilst I'd spent a lot of time drawing and illustrating and creating nice floor plans and things like that, for me the part that really got me going was actually seeing that, you know, in reality being translated to something being built. So that was the exciting part, was the building part. So the transition was relatively simple for me to move into design management, really.
And I suppose there's always been sometimes, you know, an interesting relationship between those who design and all of the creative minds, and then those who actually have to try and say, you know, that'll never work. You can't do that with that wall or that floor or that lift space or whatever. But so you are the person now that brings those two worlds together.
I help organisations solve a lot of those problems by understanding the information better. So sometimes, for example, we would do that through the creation of 3D models, and we would do virtual simulation and prototyping almost of construction projects at the start. We would help with the likes of clash detection and coordination to make sure everything will fit before we're physically out on site doing that. And then we help with all the information that sits behind that, and really trying to put it into a structure that we can use it both during the design and construction phase, but also into asset management. So what we're trying to do is really create a digital twin of what we've physically built out on site, and then we maintain that data set then on into the future.
Now, I'm going to have to get you to slow down there. I've heard about this digital twin idea, but again, explain what that actually is.
In simple terms, a digital twin is a digital real-time version of something that you can see physically. So it would be, for example, a 3D model of this building that we were in, but it would also have lots of sensor data connected to that as well. So around the heating, the lighting, the electrical consumption, the occupancy of the building, all of that feeding into it. So it's almost like a living, breathing asset. And as things get changed and updated and maintained in this building, then so does that data set. So what we have is the physical building that's physically here, and then we have a data set that matches that in real time.
The construction industry has transformed, and I know every industry has had to adapt to new ways of working, new technologies, digital transformation. But in your time, the changes, I'm sure, have been vast. Was it hard to get people on board to this new way of doing things?
Definitely is. It was, and it still is. It's one of the biggest challenges is changing the culture and changing the acceptance to work in different ways. I suppose one of the biggest challenges in the construction industry is that we never have enough money. The profit margins are notoriously low, and we never have enough time either to get the work done, and we're always up against it in terms of programme. And I think what we're trying to do with BIM and the digital construction space is tap into that small risk pot that we have on all of the projects, where we've allowed a little bit of contingency for what we don't fully understand or what we don't fully we can't fully program out, or we can't fully cost, for example. And by having that better information and by having that better knowledge, then we can tap into that risk pot, hopefully be more certain around the time and the delivery of the projects, but also add a little bit to the profit margins as well.
So you decided to start your own business after working for a large construction company before this for quite a period of time. And it was 2020 that was the catalyst. Now you do have, you have 5 children. Did you have 5 at that time?
Yes, Finn was born in 2019. So he was born just before the pandemic really kicked in, yeah.
Okay, so what was it that made you think, I'm going out on my own, even though life's hectic enough as it is?
I probably believe that the universe answers a lot of the time, and I think what's meant for you won't go by you either. I had been in November 2019, and then I was due back off maternity leave in the summer then of 2020. And the company I was working for at the time were offering some voluntary redundancy. So again, just as a result of COVID, they were trying to do some streamlining. And I said, I'll take redundancy. So it may have been a bit of a surprise. I suppose at the time I had a team of 10 and we were doing some fantastic things. But probably in my head, I thought it's either now or never. And the other part of it is probably, you could put it down to a bit of a midlife crisis. It was just before I turned 40. And again, I think if I didn't do it now, I probably never would have done it. I would have just stayed in the safe space.
I think that's a great age to start on your own. There's still so much to give and so much experience then under the belt. So how tough was it at the start?
It was not what I expected it to be. That was probably the biggest thing. In terms of starting, the first thing I did was I put a post on LinkedIn and I said, decided to go out on my own. If anybody needs any help, sort of give me a shout. And it pretty much blew up. And the phone rang and it rang and it rang, which was brilliant. So we got loads of orders, loads of customers right from the start. At the back of my head, I was always sort of thinking that if it doesn't work out, I've got this little bit of redundancy money, and if it doesn't work out, I'll find a job after Christmas and, it'll be okay either way. But thankfully, I never needed to kind of cash in on the insurance policy there and
it was
go
probably
back to work.
The opposite of that there was too much work. And was there just you?
There was just me. There was just me, and I think that's one of the biggest things that I would say if I were to do it again. It would be to realise that you don't have to do it all, and to get other people to help you, because I mean I was literally doing everything. I was doing the admin, I was doing my payroll, I was doing my bookkeeping, doing all of the things that you could potentially sort of outsource to somebody else, and then that frees up your own time for the more creative stuff or the more value adding things instead. So definitely if I were to do it again, that would be the big thing, is to ask for help, because it will be help, in the long run as well.
So what was that first year like?
The first few months was definitely nerve-wracking, and it was just holding your nerve as well, just to think it's going to be okay, we're going to get the customers, but also really exciting, because it meant I, for the first time, got to pick who I worked with, and I was able to get some fantastic clients, some really big names as well, so that really helped, but it was really busy, really hectic, but it's still definitely the best thing I ever did, and it was the right time to do it as well.
So again, you get to choose who you work with. Are they all people who are BIM converts, or they understand it, or are you still choosing to work with those who need to be convinced?
I have a real mix of people. So I mean, we have the kind of the carrot and stick very much. I suppose across the different clients that we have, some are embracing BIM because there's mandates for it and they have to do it, and if they're in the public sector then there's a certain push that they need to do something about it, and then we have clients who would work more in the private sector, who see the productivity gains from it, the efficiencies from it, the estates management benefits from it, and they're doing it because of those reasons. So we work right across the board between those who do it because they want to and those who do it because they have to, but the results are the same. And
talk us through some of those results. I don't know if you're allowed to name any clients or any big projects you've worked with, but what difference has your involvement made to the finished product?
I suppose we have lots of different clients. I think probably one of the biggest clients that we would have would be TransLink here in Northern Ireland. I was brought on board initially to sort of write a digital strategy, a BIM strategy for them, and we've implemented that now across all new projects within TransLink, which is great. So the transport hub, or the Grand Central station, which opens later on this year, was one of the first ones that I did with TransLink, and then I also helped them build their internal team, who are doing a fantastic job now in the rollout and the implementation on further projects. I'm working on a rail electrification strategy, a digital strategy for them at the moment as well, for the new sort of the phase 1 Belfast to Borders scheme. But again, they're a brilliant client to work with because they are innovative, they're forward thinking, they're looking for productivity, efficiency, they want to monitor their carbon, they want to do all of these things, and all of that sits perfectly with what we're trying to do with BIM and get the information to their hand in a digital way that will enable them to achieve those goals.
So that's incredible, and working with those brilliant people that allow you to do what you do best, but then they're also looking to train the staff to do the same thing as well. So, they're getting real value for money. So talk us through the different services that you provide.
Well, I have 3 businesses in total. So we have Origin 7, which is the one we've talked about mostly, and we provide BIM and digital construction consultancy type services, which is what I've described. The second one I started in 2022. And it's Origin 7 Digital Academy. So often, I suppose, one of the things that I found whenever I was going into organisations, I was given the same message to different clients. So I was providing the same training, the same solution. And instead of me physically turning up there and repeating the same message over and over again, we decided that we would create an academy, and people could actually go on and do it for themselves. So we started that about a year or so ago, and it offers both e-learning, so 24/7 access to the training, and then also live sessions as well, where people can dial in and I present the training and then they can ask the questions. So brilliant. I know we were talking about it just before, but I did one this morning, and it was to a team. There were 16 people on the call, but they were in India, and because they were all in India, then I changed the start time to suit an Indian 9 a.m. start time, which was 4:30 a.m. our time.
My goodness.
So,
right. And is that just what you've got to do? Have you got a lot of business in India and other parts of the world?
I think it was a bit of a surprise. So we launched the Digital Academy thinking it would be Ireland, UK kind of initially. But there's been a big interest from India, a big interest from Croatia as well. We had people sign up recently from Moldova. And we've had a big interest from the United Arab Emirates as well. But all of these countries are bringing in BIM mandates. They're encouraging the adoption of it. And I think a lot of these people are just trying to get ahead of the game and get their knowledge up, which is great.
And you say there's a third business as well.
The third one is Digital Construction Live. So you'll be
know
familiar,
all about
Sarah,
that.
yes, because you've helped us with that one before. And I mean, you'll see there's a common thread across the three of them. They're all around BIM and digital construction. But Digital Construction Live is during the day we have a conference, and then that evening then we have awards really to celebrate those who've gone the extra mile in the digital construction space, either through BIM or through the technology or some of the innovations or the projects that they've been delivering. So the next conference is on the 10th of October, and we're really looking forward to having a good turnout and lots of innovative talks and guests at that one. And
have you any good speakers lined up that you could whet appetites with?
We have a few that are on hold at the moment, but I better not say. No. But we're trying to target some keynotes in the sort of motivational speaker space, but also in digital and AI and machine learning as well, just to give a futuristic view on what the art of the possible is.
And I suppose when you're starting something brand new, like Digital Construction Live awards and the conference during the day, does it take a while for it to build?
We've probably been doing it for a few years now. I would have done it before through the BIM regions, and then we've sort of formalised it as a business. I think it was maybe 2021. We did one session during COVID, and it was a fully online type session, and then we've done the rest of them, and they've been in person. But I think the appetite is there. I think the interest is there. It's just making sure that people have the time and the availability really to come and see it.
And what about your time and availability? How do you manage to run three businesses? Is it still just you?
Well, no, I have some staff now, which is good. So we have some direct employees, but if I'm being honest, I rely a lot on outsourcing as well. So whenever I said earlier about don't be afraid to ask for help, I have a brilliant girl who helps me with social media at the moment. I have somebody else who does bookkeeping. I have somebody who helps me with 3D modelling and different things. So again, as I need them, I call them in as opposed to having them sort of directly employed. And that seems to work for them as well. And I think they're keen to have their own businesses as well. So you kind of feel like you're supporting the economy, and, you know, it's a win-win really the whole way around.
So where do you see yourself going next? Or is it just a constantly evolving... I suppose it's just a hungry beast, but you've got the three pillars now that you're very. And was it important that you actually identified those, or before that was it all a bit of a mess? You know, all jumbled in together.
I think Origin 7 was the original starting point, and then it made sense to create these other two almost spin-offs, if you want to call it that, from it. Origin 7 is the main, I suppose, company, if you want to call it that. And then the other two support it either through the networking and the opportunities that they bring, or through the sort of wider educational piece. But I suppose what the Digital Academy has shown me is that this is much bigger than I ever realised, and that whenever we were writing the business plan for that one, again, the target areas were Northern Ireland, UK, Ireland in year one, but it's much wider than that. So, you know, places that we haven't looked at, Canada, the USA, Australia, there's lots of other places, and we haven't even tried. So, you know, I think it's sitting there ready, and we just need to make some time to tap into that.
And how did you build that e-learning platform and build that academy?
Well, I suppose the training that goes on to it is the same as the live training that I give. So we already had the slides, we had the content, we had the knowledge, and then I just bought in a platform. So again, not afraid to ask for help anymore. I bought in a custom solution. I would call it a high-end custom solution as well, so it works in a streamlined way. You log in, you complete your modules, there's an exam at the end, and you get your certificate. So it's a nice streamlined process. And then for people who are working in HR, then they can log in and they can view to see, how the team have performed or if they've all completed theirs as well. So I've made it as easy as possible to automate, the training side of things, which has definitely helped.
I think it's your brilliant organised brain as well. To me, it sounds so daunting, but
you wouldn't say that, Sarah. Have you seen my desk this morning? Have you seen this
at
data?
4 a.m. when the alarm went off, and you have to. And are you delivering to one company in India, or do you have people joining?
There was two different companies, so it was 8 and 8, and then we have. With another 4 dates in June, but the 4 dates in June are all to one company. So, yeah.
And what about language barriers and things like that?
Well, thankfully they seem to understand me. So clearly the accent isn't too strong. There doesn't seem to be one, and their English is fantastic. So, yeah, there doesn't seem to be one at the moment.
And do you see AI assisting as well as you go on?
I've tried some of the AI translators and even some of the bots that you can use as well, and I've fed the script into them. I actually have one that I have fed to an AI bot which is Indian, and I've asked it to translate it, but I've sent it to a person who I know who speaks the language, and I've asked her to tell me if it's right or not, if they've got it right. So I'm waiting for her to come back.
There could be some clangers in there.
There could be. There very well could be. And I think because, again, BIM is quite acronym heavy. Again, it depends on how it picks up those acronyms.
I don't know if I have a funny story about that Otter transcription app. As a journalist, transcribing interviews whenever you were making a documentary or program used to be really, really long-winded. So it was just fantastic to be able to now feed the interviews into the computer, and then they would provide you with the transcript so you could select the clips. But I was listening to my former colleague Stephen Walker recently, who's written a wonderful book, a biography of John Hume. But the Otter app that he used to transcribe constantly called John Hume Don Juan, and Seamus Malin was Shameless Madman. So there were lots of very interesting accounts from the peace process about Don Juan and Seamus Madman. So anyway, yes, the Northern Irish accent wasn't really understood on that one.
It's a bit like that though with BIM as well. I was at a conference not that long ago, and the 3 letters, the BIM abbreviation, is the same as what the Irish Sea Fisheries Board use. So we had people turn up to a conference who thought it was something to do with Irish sea fisheries. And then the other one, there's like a supermarket in Turkey, and it's called BIM as well. So sometimes when people Google it, they mix up the two. So.
Lost in translation. Isn't that hilarious? So yeah, people got a queer shock
yes.
then. Working as a woman in construction, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about that, because construction notoriously has been male dominated and continues to be. I don't know what the current figures are. I think it's an 80-20, but maybe you've got the more accurate figures there. What's it like?
I think the figures are probably more around sort of 12-13%, as far as I know, but 80-20 is probably a fair enough roundup. I think from my perspective, it can be challenging. It really can. It can be difficult to, I suppose, find your place and find your voice, especially in some of the bigger organisations. But I think if you're confident in your message and you're confident in what you're doing, then you will go places and you can get far as well. So part of it is, I suppose, stepping up to the challenge and embracing that. And then the other part is, I suppose, dealing with the conditions that you have and the environment that you're working in.
And, as someone who's been in the construction industry for a long time, what advice do you have for other women who are still in there about finding your voice and finding that confidence? I mean, how do you get that? And does it depend on having the allies to back up your message?
I think definitely having allies helps. It definitely does. Or if you have somebody, I know in some of the organisations I've worked in previously, what we would set up, and I called it the BIM Believers. So it was almost like a network of people who believed in what I believed, which was that this is going to make life easier for everybody in the long run. And because of the very nature of the fact that those organisations were male dominated, the majority of the group would have been men anyway. But because we had the same belief that actually this will make life easier, this will make my job simpler, this will get me better outcomes, then they were on board with that. And I think once they become your allies. They become your voice as well, and then they're an extension of the message, and it definitely makes it easier. But I mean, I've had some great bosses as well, I think, over the years, and I would say a lot of the people that I would hold as true leaders are the people who just get it as well, and they're open to listening, and they're open to hearing your voice as well. But again, because it's construction, the majority of those have been men.
And with BIM, I mean, you have to be a believer because the results speak for themselves. And I know that Northern Ireland, prides itself on its construction industry. There are so many Northern Irish and indeed Irish firms that have built the world and continue to do so. For a lot of the Northern Irish companies who currently aren't able to build maybe locally, a lot of their work is across the water. So BIM, I understand, really helps in being able to envisage or work on a project back at base in Northern Ireland and not always having to travel to site. Is that correct?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. You don't need to be there as much. It definitely, remote meetings, all of that sort of thing is also enabled by BIM, and the fact that you have the information at the touch of a button. I was at an event there recently at Claridge's, and it was, I suppose, a celebration of some of the Northern Ireland contractors and product manufacturers, people like that, who had helped with that restoration and renovation. I don't know if you've seen
Which was on the programme.
Yeah, the BBC programme.
Yes, and who was the firm then that was?
There was lots of different firms that were involved in it, but it was a mixture of Northern Irish and Southern Irish. The basement was done by a team up in Donegal, but a brilliant, collaborative project for Northern Ireland as a whole and Ireland, as a whole.
I love that series, and
it was fantastic,
peppered with Irish accents.
It was it was brilliant, but I think that the point was it was definitely a BIM enabled project as well, especially a lot of the stuff that was happening in the M&E space and getting that all to fit. But it was the sheer collaborative effort of Northern Ireland, and it's something that I have always been really proud of, just what we can do, and as a small country, how we consistently punch above our weight, consistently are exceptionally resilient. And when I see projects being delivered across the UK, the most challenging ones, the most complicated ones, you'll often find that there's an Irish undertone in there somewhere, because it often needs that innovation and that collaborative approach.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's a culture thing. I think we're more willing to say yes to things. We're more willing to take on a challenge as well. I think it's an Irish thing, or a Northern Irish thing, that we just are more willing to help. Is
construction an industry that you would urge people to give it a go? And I'm particularly thinking of more women.
I think that construction at the minute isn't explained properly. I think people still, if you say construction to people, most people think it's bricklaying, it's joinery, it's driving a digger,
it's dirty, there's no toilet.
It's all of that sort of stuff. So they see all of the manual jobs, and those do exist. And for some people, that's exactly what they want to do. They want to get their hands dirty and they want to get stuck in. But I think as we see BIM and digital ways of working evolving more and more, we have data scientists now, we have, people in specialist IT roles, we have people like me. I mean, BIM simply didn't exist, 10 years ago. It wasn't a thing, but there's more and more of those types of roles. And I think as government are driving towards sort of net zero and social sustainability, all of that, there's more and more opportunities where there simply wouldn't have been them before.
What's next for you then, Melanie?
That's a good question. I think I'm going to just continue to do what I'm doing. So I really want to focus on the training academy and building that business. The Origin 7, the BIM and the consultancy one, we have lots of transformation projects on at the moment. So we would write transformation strategies for organisations, and then we give them an implementation plan, and then we offer to help, and then they can decide whether they need us or not. But we have a few really big ones on at the moment. So again, if they land or if that work comes through, then hopefully we'll be able to expand the team and service that as well. But between the two, the training academy and what we're doing in the consultancy space, and of course getting ready for Digital Construction Live in October.
I mean, it's super exciting, and you've achieved so much in such a short space of time. And we're doing this interview in 2024, and you only started it 4 years ago. Do you ever pinch yourself?
All the time, and like my sister would send me funny memes all the time. Do you know what it was like working for somebody else versus what it's like working now? And we'd be laughing at these different things. But she was a bit like me. She's gone out on her own as well, and she's kind of taken that leap. And it is completely different to working for somebody else, but it's definitely the best thing that I ever did. But I also did it at the right time. So.
And what's the best thing about it?
Having the freedom to decide who you work with and when you work and what you do. I think having that ability to choose. When you work for somebody else, you always have that obligation to, service the clients that they have picked or work on those projects. And there are projects that we turn down where it's not a good fit for us or we don't feel that we can add value to. So we also don't really bid on work. So a lot of the work that we do is for word of mouth and referrals. So again, we don't necessarily seek out work. A lot of it just kind of comes to us, which is nice.
You started this business during the pandemic, but I'm wondering what the biggest challenges have been to date. And did you ever have moments where you think, gosh, have I done the right thing?
I think the biggest challenge is finding staff. Honestly, I think actually building a good internal team that you can trust. Thankfully, we've managed to do that so far, but I would like to have more people that you can trust and give the work to, and for them to take it as a leadership thing and for them to run with it. So I think finding people is very difficult, and that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we have.
What kind of leader do you think you are?
Oh, that's a hard one. I always would say that a good leader is somebody that you want to follow. So I would hope that the things that I do make people think, oh, I think she's going in the right direction, I want to follow. So hopefully what I'm saying about BIM, about digital technology, about all of these solutions inspires other people to go and have a look, if nothing else, just to see actually what is this? Am I missing a trick here? Should I be following in this direction? So I think that's what a good leader is, somebody that you actually want to follow because you think you're going in the right direction, but also somebody who inspires you. So I know for me, some of the people that I would class as leaders are the kind of person you think if you were stuck, what would he do or what would she do? So again, I'd like to think that I'm somebody's, point of reference whenever they're stuck and they don't know what to do.
And does any great leader, whether it's somebody in your personal life or maybe somebody that's, a public figure, does anybody stand out in terms of who you really admire?
There's a few different people. I suppose from a public perspective, I've always been a big fan of Barack Obama. I think, and Michelle Obama, actually both of them together. I think both great speakers, but really inspiring in what they do and, in the leadership roles that they take in different directions really and on different themes. So probably, yeah.
They're your greatest leaders, and
I just think I look at them and they are inspiring. I also like Simon Sinek, and I'd watch his TED Talks probably on repeat, particularly the one about your why.
Yeah.
And it always has to. Sometimes you're sort of saying, is there times that you think, oh my goodness, what have I done? Sometimes when I have that moment, I would watch that TED Talk because it brings me back to my why and why I'm actually doing all of this and what the value is and how that all sort of translates out as well.
And that's it. Simon Sinek talks about, every great organisation or every organisation knows what they do and how they do it. But if you start with why you do it, and that becomes your USP all of the time, why do you do what you do?
So the strapline that we have is that we simply want to explain information management because we want people to simply understand why this is a brilliant idea. So I do it because I believe this is a good idea and I believe that this will help with productivity, efficiency and all of the bigger goals that organisations have. But I also believe that because I know what happens if you don't. And I've seen organisations who don't do it this way, who don't follow sort of standards and they reinvent the wheel every time. So because I can see both sides of the coin, I know why this is the right way to do it. And I suppose my why is getting more people to do it this way because the more who do it this way, the bigger impact we will have.
Sometimes when you're a consultant, it can be difficult to put a price on your knowledge and your expertise. A lot of people want to ring you up for a chat. Does that happen?
All the time. And I put the link on my I think it's on my LinkedIn or maybe on the website, but and people can book a call now directly, so that it's just 15 minutes and a lot of the time people will book a call. I've had to limit the number that I will take, but it's to ask very specific questions and to ask very specific things. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with, giving some time in that space. But if it starts to get to be the same person over and over again, then sometimes that can be a bit much.
Oh, so they're repeat callers.
Sometimes, and I suppose sometimes you'll find that they're doing an assignment or they're doing a particular piece of work, and perhaps the question they're asking me is the question that's on their assignment. So sometimes it could be a little bit too
getting
close.
That balance right.
Yes.
So yeah, you want to be a spokesperson for the industry, a spokesperson for BIM. You want to have these conversations, but you also want to then say, okay, book me and let me come in and let me transform your business.
Yes, but I mean, I suppose from a more public side of things as well, I do try to limit the number of events that I speak at as well. So I would try to limit it to maybe 3 per year, and then when that 3 is up, then that's it.
Why?
Well, because of the time that it takes.
You could be doing that all the time.
And it's not even the time that it takes to do the presentation, it's also the time it takes to create. There's often slides involved and everything else as well. And I think a lot of the reason that people do presentations is the business development thing. And I don't necessarily need more clients or more, we have plenty of pipeline at the moment anyway, thank goodness. But if that started to dip off a wee bit, then maybe I'd need to ramp that up.
Well, you've made such a success of such a great 3 businesses that you have now, Melanie. Thank you so much for being a guest on this on the Public Eye podcast today. But before you leave, I have to ask you the final question, the one that I ask everyone. The purpose of this podcast is to inspire existing business owners and ambitious entrepreneurs to grow their business by offering an insight into the success of businesses such as Origin 7. So then, what advice would you give to people who may have a business idea but have no idea where to begin or are unsure as to whether the risk is worth taking?
I would say to anybody that life is short and we are not guaranteed of anything. And for me, taking the risk going out into business was always less of a risk than dealing with not ever having tried it. So I think if you have that burning desire and there's that little voice that's sort of niggling in your ear, you should do it. Listen to your gut and just go ahead and give it a go. Give yourself a time frame. If it doesn't work out by whenever, then well, you give it a go. But for me, starting this business when I started it was absolutely the right thing, and I think that's probably why it has been successful and continues to grow.
And that work-life balance with your 5 sons, all, from, 15 down to 4?
Yes.
How do you manage to have some downtime as well, and what do you do?
I think most of my weekends are spent, the boys play a lot of sports, so rugby and football and hockey and different things. So at some point I will be on the edge of some pitch somewhere, but we also like to go up to the north coast. As you know, Sarah, it's beautiful up there.
It is.
But surfing, paddle boarding and just nice long walks on the beach. I have a lovely dog as well, just to add into the mix, and I love nothing more than just taking him for a big walk to the beach.
And do you get any time to yourself?
Do
you look after your own well-being?
That is
your downtime.
Whenever I'm taking the dog for a walk. But no, I would go on some spa days and things with my sister, and I just love to watch TV and just read a book and just sit and not actually think about too much. So,
and what do the family think of BIM? Do they know what Mum does?
I think my younger children think that I like colour in stuff.
Okay.
I think that's how they would describe it. And my older son, Harry, he's actually doing a GCSE in construction at the moment. And he keeps showing me different bits and pieces, and I keep telling him, you should tell the teacher this, so I'm going to get him into trouble. But he understands what it is and what we're trying to do. And hopefully he'll take a bit of an interest in it.
It might be a family business.
You never know. My husband is, he was an architect. We met at university as well, so he knows what I'm talking about at least as well.
Watch this space.
Indeed.
Melanie, thank you so much for being here today. It's been brilliant to hear about your journey to date and continued success. And thanks again, everyone, for tuning into the Public Eye podcast. This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service for our team using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.